Welcome to this week's Let's Talk About Live. This week's Let's Talk About Live is the chapter 6 of my upcoming book that's now available for pre-order, Migraine Root Reclaim Rise. Struggling to get my words out there. I've already delivered this as a live, and for those that were able to join us, you'll know that we had significant connection issues again. We got off to an okay start, and then I realised about 10 minutes in I was probably sat there entirely on my own. So I continued on with the practice of reading the chapter, The Illusion of Function, what happens when survival looks like strength, and then I've come to re-record it after my dinner. So here we go. Round 2. Keeps happening this, doesn't it? So I managed to re-record one of the chapters yesterday from one of the earlier chapters, Dismissed, When Pain Speaks and Nobody Listens. But I'm going to re-record this one now, The Illusion of Function, and then share this with you on the Substack platform, and then go back and re-record Choosing Your Path and The Power of Belief. So let's start by opening the space, and I'm going to share with you the energy or the energetic intentions that I tuned into before our kind of 4 p.m. British summertime circle style meeting earlier on today. So we're going to light a candle in honor of one of those. The first one, which was communication, it came through as. The second, understanding. And the third, bridging, specifically in respect of building a bridge from where we are now to where we are moving towards. So communication, understanding, and bridging. Perhaps one of those speaks to you more than the others. Perhaps the term bridging has a different meaning to you than the one I've just shared. How I feel into that. Communication, understanding, bridging. And now we'll start with, or continue rather, with an arrival meditation, a settling in meditation, which you're very welcome to participate in. You can join us in the closing of your eyes, or taking a gentle gaze to a space in front of you, or if you prefer, allowing the words to kind of wash over you as you stare out the window or something else. If you would like to join us by first connecting with your breath or finding your breath, just gently noticing your breath today in this moment, perhaps for the first time today, perhaps the first time you've connected to your breath this week, or even this month. But that is the invitation in this moment, to notice, to simply observe. Perhaps even going as far as feeling that rise and that fall of each inhale and each exhale. To do that, you might like to join me in placing a hand on your chest, one on your chest, one on your belly. And as small or as gentle or as little as the rise and fall may be, just feeling for that connection as you breathe in and as you breathe out. Without any pressure to fix anything or change anything or perfect anything. Even as I give myself permission to not have to perfect anything or get it right, or perform in a certain way, I felt that relief in my body, shown to me by the deepening of the breath. The nervous system feeling a momentary relax, or a moment of relief, release, openness. Allowing it to expand in its own terms, in its own way, in its own time scale. And staying with your breath, perhaps your breath is open and expansive too. Perhaps it's short and shallow. We're not looking to observe this in a way that we're going to judge it or anything like that. We're not here to perform. We're not here to put up a show. We're here to show up as we are. That is the invitation. We're here to notice, to explore with curiosity. And even as I say those words again, my body just makes room or takes up space with almost this big, almost sigh-like breath of relief. I don't have to pretend. I don't have to present in a certain way. And neither do you. So as we continue to stay gently with our breath, let's open up to feeling that seat beneath us, that support rising up to meet us, whether that is connecting with our sit bones, perhaps we're lying down and we can feel that support rising up to meet us all the way along our back, our side. Almost acting as a bridge in itself, a bridge between our body and the earth. Feeling steadied by that bridge, grounded, stable, connected, knowing that that support is there physically beneath us and possibly behind us. And coming back to our breath once more, perhaps taking a slightly bigger breath than the ones preceding it. Taking a moment to thank it for being there for us, for always being here, for being accessible and available to us at any time, in any moment, no matter how we may be showing up, how we are feeling. Using your breath to come back into your body, perhaps bringing in some gentle movement and rocking from side to side, and then doing some gentle hip circles. Maybe you want to move your fingers, your toes. Big stretch. Oh, welcome. If you've seen any of my notes on Substack this morning, you'll know that I've been slap bang in the messy middle. It's been really uncomfortable, painful, discombobulating. Perhaps you're feeling very much in the messy middle at the time of tuning into this yourself as well. Perhaps it's something that feels very familiar to you. Very uncomfortable. And so as part of processing that, connecting with that, allowing myself to feel that, which, you know, there was a bit of resistance to. There was a lot of old patterns coming up for me around producing, achieving, doing, getting on with it, getting things right, perfecting everything. They were kind of all piling in today and yesterday, really coming up for my attention and to be witnessed, but also being witnessed in ways that I haven't been present with before and haven't necessarily been able to, or certainly not as quickly, because the pain that I was feeling was quite mild to some extent, a lot less debilitating, a lot less disabling than what I've lived with and experienced for most of my life. And in that space, I connected with how I felt. I asked myself the question, how can I support how I'm feeling? I did a lot of journaling around it. I voiced it to a couple of friends in voice notes. And in the end, I also ended up writing a few poems speaking to where I was at. One of them was the Substack note. I was inspired to share a Substack note, and I didn't realise it was a poem, but it turned into a poem. So that's what I'm going to start this reading with for you today, is that Substack note turned poem that I then went on to call The Messy Middle. Gifting myself some space to sit in the messy middle. It is hard, uncomfortable, painful, messy, and yet the insights are there. The feeling, the knowing, the clarity, all readying themselves for release. And still the need to perform, to get it right, to perfect, rearing its head once more, asking for my attention, for me to see it, to witness it, to feel it. Right now, it feels never ending. Letting it be is the hardest thing. Perhaps because doing something about it has always felt easier. But maybe for today, there is nothing to do. Just space, just presence, just me sitting here in the messy middle. And I can share with you one thing that did help when I shared that in the Substack note, and there were a couple of fellow readers pipe up that they too felt like they were in the messy middle. And when we sat down to initially meet and gather together on Substack Live earlier on, before the connection kind of disbanded completely, a few of us in that space were also saying things along the lines of, yeah, me too. Yeah, definitely feeling it. So for me, when that is the case, there's definitely something going on energetically, but also there are the seasons that are our own seasons. But it sure helped to know that I wasn't alone in that. And if you are somewhere in the messy middle and feeling like your messy middle, your version of it in the season you're in is never ending, let this be a reminder to you that you are not alone. Many of us are facing and sat with the unknown, the uncertainty, the discombobulation, the discomfort, the pain, the fear, the lack of space, freedom, needs that we have that are calling for our attention to be met. And, you know, for a great many of us, we're here trying to figure this shit out together. So you are not alone. The illusion of function when survival looks like strength. Strength is often applauded, but being seen is what truly heals. Reading the records. As part of processing the enormity of my lived experience, I obtained a full copy of my medical records. I particularly wanted to understand the link between trauma and migraine, not only in respect of how head injury can manifest as post-traumatic migraine or post-concussion headache, but how repeated medical interventions, chronic dismissal, emotional strain, and early life stress quietly condition the nervous system toward hypersensitivity. Trauma is not always an accident or an incident. Sometimes it is an accumulation. The body does not file trauma by type, it files it by impact, and the nervous system does not distinguish neatly between categories. It responds to overwhelm the only way it knows how, by becoming vigilant, reactive, protective. Over time, that vigilance can harden into hypersensitivity. Neurological hypersensitivity, sometimes described as structural, functional, or brain abnormality, is widely recognized in medicine as a known root cause of migraine. For years, I searched for the moment that explained it. Before I could speak, I made the connection in my early 20s between head injury and a specific type of attack that only ever happened at night and left me wishing I were dead. I had received blows to the head at 17, 10, 9, and 2 years old. One scar remains visible. The others remain unseen, at least by cultural standards. Additionally, my medical records revealed I was dropped from my mother's arms at 3.5 months old and fell down the stairs at 10.5 months old. The second hospital record states injury to head, pass out, vomiting, bleeding. 2 head injuries before I could even walk. I was in shock, and yet my body knew it before I did. All my life I've called it migraine. My records call it trauma. My first reaction wasn't grief. It was minimization. It could have been worse. I thought of all the ways terrible incidents of this nature could manifest. Permanent disfigurement, verbal or cognitive delays, paralysis. The voice was trying to comfort me, but as I sat with the reports, all I felt was numbness, distance. The mask of function. Up until my late 30s, I minimized illness, kept quiet about it, hid it away. An approach mirrored throughout the medical system and society at large. A lack of interest, disregard for an illness that isn't visible. All my life I've been told how high functioning I am, how strong, how capable. I was praised for resilience, when really I was just surviving. Perhaps that's the problem. We live in a culture that worships function. We applaud those who keep going, even when their nervous system is screaming for rest. We measure recovery in productivity, not peace. We celebrate people who push through pain, but rarely question the systems that demand it. We confuse coping with healing. We confuse being okay with being well. Maybe you too have been praised for strength when what you really needed was to be believed. Adaptation as society's silent expectation. For much of my life, I learned to adapt I learned to survive quietly, to keep functioning, to meet expectations even while my body ached and my nervous system screamed. Adaptation is allowed. It is even expected. Society rewards it. You are applauded for showing up, for staying productive, for handling it. You are told resilience is admirable, perseverance praiseworthy, and grit heroic. But there is a catch. Adaptation is only socially sanctioned if you meet the rules of function. Appear capable. Hide your struggle. Once the coping cracks, once the pain becomes visible, the applause fades. You are left to navigate the system alone, often feeling guilty for needing help. Adaptation is not the enemy. It is a skill. It is a way to survive. But it is not healing to stay confined to one way of adapting. When ease is safer than truth. When a child spends all day fawning, conforming, suppressing, holding themselves together at enormous internal cost, the system reads that as wellness, writes Marie Christie Oliver, Substack author of the Reframe Diaries. We are teaching our kids that being easy is safer than being honest, and then we are surprised when they pay for it with their bodies, she continues. The body remembers what honesty was never allowed to express. It learns early which parts are welcome and which must be hidden. It learns that safety lives in silence, in compliance, in being easy to love. And so we adapt, not because we are weak, but because we are wise. But what protects us as children can quietly cost us as adults. The tension held in the body, the words never spoken, the truth never lived. Over time, the body begins to speak on our behalf. The cultural lens of performing wellness. Permanent disfigurement, developmental delays or paralysis would have received recognition, treatment, support. Migraine and headache rarely does. Our medical system values what it can measure, prove or fix: a test, a scan, an operation, a medication. It overlooks the complexity of migraine, trauma, and nervous system dysregulation, all of which require a multi-dimensional approach. Migraine and headache is far from an ache in the head. It is a jumble of brain energy and sensory regulation. Functioning through it is like driving with the engine light on for years until one day the engine refuses to start. The silent injury the body remembers. I had learned to survive through adaptation, not healing. To survive while staying unseen. Praised for coping while locked in survival. I call this a silent injury syndrome, appearing strong and active while carrying what went unnamed. A head injury leaves more than visible bruises, lumps and scars. It leaves an energetic echo that shapes how safety feels in the body. Symptoms are familiar: exhaustion, perfectionism, migraine, emotional sensitivity, high function masking deep depletion. The cause is invisible injury, whether physical, emotional, energetic, never witnessed, never soothed, never integrated. When wellness is measured only by output, we learn to mute pain, intuition, and sensitivity. We call this coping. Really, it is disconnection. And for me, it was a body living on borrowed time. The price of performance. Functioning has cost me my energy, connection, joy, creativity, and authentic expression. Naming this grief opens the door to compassion and curiosity. Chronic adaptation keeps the nervous system in sympathetic dominance. True healing requires safety, recalibration, restoration, and expansion, not performance. One thing, once I could no longer give off the impression I could function, I had to feel. I had to listen. I could no longer hide or suppress my symptoms. The more authentic and truer to myself I became, the more my health gradually improved. Illness, I learned, is not something to be controlled or managed. It is health to be created. From function to freedom. Once the performance cracks, we search for a fix. We crave a cure that will allow us to function again. All because that is what we have been taught healing means. But what if there is no cure? Because there is nothing wrong with who you are. What if the task isn't to fix the brain, but to free it? Healing is never about going back. It is about going inward. Function versus health. We are often praised for strength when what we really need is to be seen. Functioning is not the same as health. We survive under the weight of expectation, masking exhaustion, sensitivity, and pain. True healing begins when we stop performing, when we pause, when we listen to what our bodies and hearts have been silently asking for all along. Let's take a few moments to return to our breath. And continue some gentle breathing once more. As we move towards sitting with the gentle invitation. A gentle invitation accompanies each of the chapters in Pathway 1. So if you'd like to return to a meditative state, eyes closed or a gentle gaze to a space ahead of you. Similarly, you might wish to make a note of the prompts in your journal. Or again, if you want to allow these words to simply wash over you while staring out the window or something like that, the choice is very much yours. You might like to connect to the seat or the support beneath you once more. That support that is rising up to meet you, to hold you, bridging our body, our sit bones, our back with the earth beneath us. And I invite you to ask yourself the question, or again, you can write this down if you prefer, journal on it. Make a note of it to return to later, or sit with it in gentle reflection and meditation. What parts have I been performing fine while silently asking for help? What parts have I been performing fine while silently asking for help? Or what parts of you have been performing fine while silently asking for help? So I know for me that silently I was asking to be seen, to be believed, to be heard. And unbeknown to me as well, to be held, to be witnessed, to be understood. And yet the parts of me that were performing were the people-pleasing parts, the good girl parts, the perfectionist parts, the parts of me, the adaptations really, those parts of me that had learned to adapt to the environment that I was living in order to survive. So what parts of you have been performing fine while silently asking for help? That's the gentle invitation that accompanies this chapter, but also with this chapter, a little bit different to the others, are some self-reflection prompts. If you want to continue this gentle invitation with me, you're very welcome. Again, you might prefer to make a note of the prompt and sit with it another time, or simply allow the words to wash over you. What might true safety, not productivity, look like in your daily life? What might true safety, not productivity, look like in your daily life? I know for me, as I mentioned at the beginning, I found myself in the messy middle this week. It's Tuesday evening. I've spent 2 days in the messy middle. All my patterns came piling in yesterday that I must carry on. I must get on with it regardless. I must produce. I had a plan. I was trying to make myself stick to the plan, even though my body was asking for space. It needed time. It needed some inner inquiry in the form of journaling, reflection. But in those moments, for whatever reason, I didn't feel safe enough to take up space. I didn't feel safe enough to be seen for needing time and space to come back to myself, back to my body, back to my centre after a particularly busy and frantic time, the peak of summer here in the UK. A lot of celebration, a deadline for my book. It's been a big, buoyant time, and I needed space to come down for that. So what might true safety, not productivity, look like in your daily life? So true safety to me yesterday looked like carving out space for myself, reassuring myself, reminding myself that it was safe for me to slow down. It was safe for me to rest. That it didn't mean anything if I couldn't stick to my plan, if I couldn't keep going, if I couldn't do, achieve, produce. What might true safety, not productivity, look like in your daily life? And we'll complete this with a third one. If you no longer needed to perform wellness, what would your body finally say? If you no longer needed to perform wellness, what would your body finally say? For me, that looked like a exacerbated sigh, thank you, big fat thank you, relief. Space to fall apart, something that I was fearing a lot for a long time. If you no longer needed to perform wellness, what would your body finally say? Is that something your body has been asking for some time, for a long time? Is it a whisper or a nudge that you've heard? Is it something that you know to be true? Is it like me, something to fear, or to think that we have to do, that it's expected of us? Does it feel expected? What if you no longer needed to do any of that? What would your body finally say? Other people, yeah, they might have things to say. In my life, I got told I was selfish. I was too vulnerable to make decisions about my health. I didn't know what I was doing. And really, I was showing up as a version of myself that they had never met before. I couldn't see any of this at the time. Of course, it was, well, I was in a state of despair. Felt like a dilapidated house that was beyond repair. Or that was what I was being told from the medical field anyway, that there was no hope, that it wasn't possible to carry out any kind of rebuild, that there wasn't space for it or room or the support available to do that. And they've got a point, really, you know, when we look at it, what it takes, what it involves. But I'm hoping that's what this book shares with you. Possibility, the possibility, some support, some companionship. Not, here's how I've done it, here's how you must do it too. But here's what happened, here's what this looked like for me. Here's what I learned from it. Let's have a conversation about it. Let's open the door to possibility. Let's sit with what we know to be true. Let's sit with what's been coming up for our attention. Let's create the space. Let's bring in a sense of safety. And if you'd love to share in the comments, I'd love to hear any reflections, any insights, what came up for you, anything you want to share, anything you want to give voice to, speak to, any questions you want to ask. I love questions. I'd love to hear from you. And this chapter reading, what happened with quite a few of the chapters that I wrote in the book, is that one chapter became 2 chapters, some even became 3, others 4. That happened quite a few times throughout the book. And this was one of them. So the illusion of function, which we've explored together today, when survival looks like strength, is followed with next week's the intelligence of malfunction, why your body isn't broken. I know that for many of us, we've been taught or have come to see that malfunction equals failure. Our body is not cooperating. I know I totally believed that my body was attacking me. I didn't realise, I hadn't been made aware, and I hadn't come across that in my research or connected to my insights in that way or come to understand as yet that my body wasn't attacking me. It was trying to communicate to me. It was trying to let me know that it needed my attention, that something needed to change, that it needed to be heard, it needed me to hear it. And that actually there was an intelligence to the malfunction. It wasn't going haywire, it wasn't going wrong, there wasn't something wrong with me, there was nothing wrong. In fact, there was nothing to worry about. Nothing was wrong. It was trying to get my attention. And I was aware in some ways, actually, in many ways. There were things that I could hear, but I wasn't always listening, and I was allowing myself to dismiss what I knew to be true, especially in honour of what someone else said, thinking somebody else knew better than me or more than me or knew what was right for me. And it didn't always feel like I had a voice or a choice. That's one of the chapters that I'm about to re-record, actually, is the choosing your path, choose your path. courage as the first step. Didn't always feel comfortable, of course, or like I had much of a choice or a voice, and I've come to realise that it certainly wasn't the case for my ancestors, for our ancestors. There are the times that we've been living in, and still many in the world, in fact, where we do not have that choice or a voice. And when we do connect with it, it's not necessarily always the choices we want to be making, is it? But we are here nevertheless. You are here. I am here. We are not alone. And on that note, I shall blow out the candles to close this space, as I look forward to hearing from you. Send me a DM if you prefer not to share in the comments. You're welcome to do that too. And I'll leave you with closing the space as we blow out the candles for the energetic intentions that I tuned into before this circle today. The first one being for communication, understanding, and bridging. Communication, understanding, bridging. Specifically in respect of the bridge from where we are and where we are moving towards. So I'll leave you with that. Thank you for being here.